Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 261, I think. Yeah, 261. Anyway, hey guys, I hope you guys are all having a great day. Very quickly, in case you're wondering why the channel is so slow with content, I've just been going through a lot of personal things. And you know, personal life, when it gets involved, time goes away. But anyway, yeah, just that very quick thing. Let's get into the chapter. Now, this chapter 261 was pretty cool. It was a battle chapter and like minimal progression. We went from Bunny Girl getting into the place to Bunny Girl fighting Nomus. We haven't made a lot of serious progression, and you'll see why when we like actually do the walkthrough in the chapter. Because a lot of it was spent building, well, not a lot of it, but a good chunk was spent building up the doctor's attachment to his Nomu. Now, one thing I do want to say is that this week we did get one of the potentials that we were talking about last week. This week we did end up in a situation where the doctor did manage to run away, and he is using the Nomus to stall Bunny Girl. And we also got the condition that these Nomus may not be 100% powerful, you know, at their 100%. You know, when we go into the walkthrough, I'll show you there are points here that indicate what the author might be doing here. But it was cool to see that we actually went into a potential, and we actually did get the heroes showing up to help Bunny Girl here. I really thought there was a possibility that maybe she would be alone for one full chapter, but it was cool to see Crust get in there so quickly. Any other things to say before we get started? Yeah, I saw that the doctor's name is now Garaki Kyodai or something like that. It's in like chapter 259, I think. I did want to say it because I forgot to mention it last week. The reason that the character's name was initially Shiga was because the character wanted to pay homage to All for One in some kind of way. So it was actually kind of interesting that the author went and used the other part of the name Garaki and gave that to him. So he still maintained that spirit. I didn't think he would change Shiga, but I guess since he was changing the name, he might as well go for it. But yeah, now we have a character that has had Shiga and then Garaki. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, let's just get into it. The first page is Bunny Girl looking amazing. There's not really much else to say there other than she looks amazing. It's a good shot of her. There's a lot of good shots of her. I think there were like 3 to 4 good shots. We'll have to count up. Anyway, we go into page officially 2 and 3 on Viz. We have to take page 2 and 3 together because they tell a full story between those 2 pages. You guys can't look at one and just analyze it from there. The main thing that you should take away from this one is that the chapter begins building up an attachment towards the Nomus. That's what the author started setting up there. One thing that you can take away from this though, like when you look at the grotesque nature of it, I'll especially show you this panel with him hugging Johnny. What's interesting here is just this is a grotesque image, and it's done with the shoujo filter, showing that the guy really was in love with his creations. The reason this is all important is because this sets up what happens later with Mocha. I do think that the author, what he wanted to do here is establish that this guy has an attachment, and when you have an emotional attachment, it warps the reality of the situation. And I specifically think it's warping the reality of the situation when it comes to Mocha. I think the perception's off, and when we get to Mocha's page, we'll talk more about that. But that's one of the main things that we take away from page 2 and 3 is that it's establishing emotional investment, like an emotional investment that you and I cannot easily understand unless we were to use actual people instead of like the abominations that he's creating. Now, one other thing that I want to say is because these pages also start the destruction of the Nomu designs, we're going to be talking a lot about Nomu designs because we're trying to figure out how many high ends were unleashed out into Bunny Girl's area. There's a lot of Nomu designs between the first ones that we saw towards the ones that were presented in the last chapter that are unaccounted for. Like, we don't know where these designs went. And with the designs that we got here, the ones that we got unleashed in this chapter, they are the ones that were presented initially back during the Shigaraki versus the Liberation Army arc. So, you know, the author has taken time making these designs. Chances are they're going to be used to some degree. More details that I want to point you to towards this particular chapter, or sorry, these particular pages. This panel of the doctor freaking out, I want to point to you that he's holding 2 quirk vials in his hand. That's interesting because it means that of all the quirks that he wanted to hold on to, he's holding on to these ones. What are the 2 quirks that he's holding in his hands? That's the question, because he's pretty much saying those are the most valuable quirks in this whole place, given that he's carrying them. He was about to run away with them. So that's important to note there. Other important notes is that we get the flashback panel of him thinking about All for One. That's just part of his investment panel. What I think is actually very, very interesting there is that when you look at that panel and then you look at the one next to it that's showing the carnage, the Nomu that All for One was praising seems to still be in the vial. That's really interesting. Think about the implications of that. This is from a time when All for One still had hair. That is from a time before All for One was taken down. That high-end Nomu has been in that vial for years. What is actually like the growth rate for these Nomus? That's really interesting because it tells us how long was Hood actually in that canister? How long was he in that tube? How long does it take for a Nomu to actually mature? That is a terrifying thing to think about here. That the Nomu that we are seeing in this guy, like the one where he's being praised, is still not active. But that does give hope for Bunny Girl, because hopefully we'll see what it means to see an unstable Nomu. Hopefully they'll just disintegrate under their power after a while. Anyway, we get Carnage, and we do see that at least 2 Nomus have been taken out, with the Tentacle Nomu and the Grape Nomu being destroyed. And the reason I call it Grape is because we go into page 3 and page 4, or sorry, page 4 and page 5. So what I want to point you towards in page 4 is specifically the scene of Carnage, where you have this Nomu here. It has balls on its back, and honestly, I sincerely hope those are not Mineta's grapes. I do not want to think that the doctor somehow managed to replicate Mineta, or, you know, his quirk. Would it make sense? How well, actually, no. All this doctor really needs to do, from as far as we're aware, given that the double quirk is active right here, maybe he only needs a blood sample. All it really takes is this doctor getting a blood sample of Mineta, and he might have legitimately have replicated Mineta's quirk. That is terrifying. If Mineta's quirk is here, it's game over for the heroes. All it takes is one hero getting stuck to that ball and then being pushed into a wall, and that hero is not getting out of there unless they take the whole wall with them. So Mineta's quirk, if it is involved here, could be a severe problem. The only thing that could really save them, if Mineta's quirk was involved here, is the instability factor. We don't know how long these Nomus are going to last, knowing that they aren't ready. They might just disintegrate. Hopefully the Mineta balls would also disintegrate, because Mineta's balls lose their stickiness after, I think, a day or so. They have a limit to how long they are active. We'll have to see how the author wants to use this. When you look at the panel there, it doesn't seem like there's any twitching coming out of that one, but given that that's also the one that's been around since All for One was around, just going off of the designs here, that one's kind of sketch. That one could be kind of a sketch situation. Anyway, the remainder of page 4 just transitions us into page 5, and it's just a very quick update on what the other heroes are doing. The only other things that are of value on page 4 are the defeat of the Carrier Nomu and the fact that Bunny Girl is having a good time. She's still very battle hungry, and that characterization is present throughout the entire chapter. Anyway, we go into page 5, and page 5 is just the showing off of what everyone's doing. The things of value here, the Patience got out, and Rocklock got more lines. Who would have thought that Rocklock, the guy introduced as a throwaway hero back in Shizaki's arc, would get so much information, or would get so much screen time? I knew that he was gonna get so much screen time. Look, man, the fact is, Rocklock being here only makes sense to me, in the sense that the author is using all the character designs that he has in his arsenal right now, and Rocklock got a flashback. Rocklock has more character than Nejire. Think about that. It makes total sense that this guy is still going to be getting lines here, because that's how it was. Like, that's the precedent that was set back with the raid arc. Rocklock is a character that is here to stay. He has a backstory. He has character build up. You know, Rocklock could be one of those easy casualties that the author could pull there and maybe get some value out of it. It's just like, I'm also pretty apathetic to Rocklock. Whenever I look at Rocklock, I just look at that as the epitome of the problem when it came to giving screen time to characters in the raid arc, because he is the poster boy for making funny jokes about Ryukyu and Nejire, and I love bringing that up any chance I get. Fact is, Rocklock has more backstory than Nejire. That's just how it goes. It's just funny to think about it, because it's just an issue of how screen time shakes out, and you can tell when the author likes a design. Rocklock is like one of those guys that he clearly liked. Like, of all the heroes introduced there, he's the one that came out of there with more effort put into him. So I have hopes for the character. I hope he gets to be effective. He's helping out in this little situation here. But even if he does like something trivial that's useful, I think would be nice for the character. Again, I think he is one of those characters that we could afford to lose in a battle. And there's enough emotional investment there. The last time we saw his wife crying for him, we could see his wife crying for him again. This time he's not responding to it. That would be a totally fine thing to show the casualties from this battle. That said, he is in a chaotic scene with a lot of the really cool heroes. In this panel, we got to see a few interesting ones. If you look at the character that's next to Endeavor, can you tell the feather? Can you tell the design? That's, I think, the character that was in the Stain arc. That's totally him. He's right next to Endeavor. So that just reiterates to you that the author really is bringing out all the stops when it comes to the character designs here. And anyway, in the Carnage scene, we can see a bunch of other heroes. Aizawa's facing down Nomus. President Mike is also in there facing down Nomus. Endeavor, obviously. No, it's a really cool Carnage situation, and it's cool that the author is using designs. Another cool little detail that you can take here is that there is a Nomu quite literally coming in through the ceiling. So it's pretty much how much space is in the rafters is what I'm is like what I'm wondering, and it's just cool to see how many Nomus are coming in from all directions. Also, guys, just for the record, I like making fun of the whole Nejire situation versus Rocklock, but don't take it seriously. It's just a fun little thing. Anyway, moving on, we move into page 6. And page 6, I think, might be the most important page for the arc, because as we go into page 6, the author does one really cool thing, which is justifying where all the Nomus are coming from, giving us the information that they are in storage chambers. So that's just really good writing. Thank you, author. I wasn't wondering about that, but thank you for giving me the answer anyway. I really appreciate that. The most important thing here is the fact that Crust found a passageway that leads up and out, and it implies that the morgue isn't the only route. Now, I ask you, as an author, why would you put that detail in there if it's not going to be useful? Someone important or someone critical is going to end up using that passageway to either enter the building or get out of the building. Right now, I'm leaning towards getting out. It could be used by anyone. Crust is the one that saw it. Crust is the one there with Bunny Girl. Both of them could try and use it if something goes wrong to get out of there. I don't know in what situation the morgue is going to be closed off for the heroes. So, given that this is a route that appeared, or a route that is in between the morgue and the main lab, who would use that route? If he wants to get out of there faster by foot, the doctor, because it won't take you to the morgue. The heroes have less reason to take that thing out when they don't know where it's going. So right now, I'm thinking it's gotta be the doctor that's gonna try and use it, because it'd be the better option for him. Kind of hard to like work through it. The other very likely thing is that something comes in through there and it really messes things up. But we don't have any sense of what could come in through there, given that the Nomus have already established they're coming in from everywhere. It can't be a Nomu that would use that door. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if the doctor is going to use that. And we do see that the passageway is through a bunch of Nomu canisters. I don't know. That route's going to be important, though. That's good. That's going to be super important. Now, the only other thing that's valuable on page 7 is just more of Crust's characterization, saying that he wants to apprehend the root of evil that lies ahead. All right, sure. You know, regardless, that just follows his rhetoric. That's just a characterization moment. Oh, I feel stupid. Why am I not talking? Like, also of value is not only with Crust's characterizations that we see his quirk. Man, it's kind of funny. Like, I kept looking at that and I kept like registering it. Oh, that's his quirk. But it's like, oh, right, we haven't seen this before. Yeah, it looks like he looks like he's an armor hero. It looks like he manages to create armor around him. That's pretty neat. Good for him. I just got distracted by the whole finding a passageway. Moving into page 8, things of value on page 8. Well, Bunny Girl being awesome, the doctor shitting his pants, and the start of the page 9 rhetoric. Page 9 is significantly more important than page 8. So, things of value for page 9. 1. They are not in the testing phase. Important information, so they are untested. Next, the doctor is having trouble manufacturing them without one for all. Sorry, all for one. It doesn't say that it's impossible for him to manufacture, but it's harder. So that's good to know. The rate of creation of Nomus has been slowed down. Good to confirm that. It took 10 hours for Hood to stabilize. And then the final detail, which I think is the most important, is of course they should be strong enough in a pinch like this, but ... So really what we need to know here is, what does it look like when a Nomu is not stable? What does it look like when a Nomu is not tested? Really, if there's anything that's gonna save Bunny Girl, this is one of those factors. Because right here, if we're having a problem when they're not stabilized, what does stabilize usually mean in power? It means that maybe they're not using their power right. Maybe their power is too much for their body to handle. Taking 10 hours to stabilize, I'm really interested to see how this is going to go. Especially with him saying that they're going to be strong in a pinch, pretty much tells me that the doctor is expecting them to be helpful for a very short amount of time. But that's all the doctor really needs. Right now, with the way that the story is building this up, it does seem like the author is trying to push for a situation where the doctor is going to barely be able to escape. The Nomus are going to give him that extra second that he needs. He's going to get that extra little moment, and it's going to be maybe one of those sad moments. The author could build it up like this, where we get so close to victory, but because of that extra second that the Nomus got, it turns the tables on the heroes. The big thing that you should take away from page 8 and page 9 together is that we are really running out of options for the doctor. Like, the doctor is getting really, really desperate here, which is good for us because we want the doctor to be desperate. We don't want him to keep pulling out all these insane tricks. So I'm happy with this page, and I'm very excited because I think the author did a really good job establishing that Bunny Girl and Crust have a way out here that doesn't just rely on beating Nomus properly. Another thing I do want to say is that I did love the build throughout the entire page 9. I did like the build, like how it goes from the doctor being freaked out, wishing for another day. He's pulling out his device. You see Bunny Girl's shoe get so close to his arm, and then all of a sudden you go into page 10 and page 11 and you see what just happened there with Mocha jumping in, using double quirk. I love how the author's positioned that, because it's again one of those moments of, oh man, if she was just like 1 second faster. That's why he went in to really illustrate how close she was getting to his arm. We do see that with the way that the thing attacked. It attacked her at her hip, so it throws off her balance kind of, and then she manages to just rip off some of the guy's shirt. So that was really cool build up. I really like that. You could tell that something was about to go wrong with how close she was getting to his arm. I really enjoyed that page. But what is of value of page 10? Not much aside from the near miss and the glance and just the uttering of the name, because when you go into page 11 is where you get again more value, where the doctor is being thankful towards Mocha and he manages to activate the high ends. So one thing, I like that we know who has the double quirk. I like that we know it was this most recent Nomu. When the doctor is saying a true miracle, using your quirk without even being told to, and to protect me, I'm at a spot where I don't know whether or not to believe it. So let's take the two potentials here. If the thing is exactly like the doctor said, that this thing tried to protect him, that's dangerous because it says that the Nomus default to being kind to the doctor. And when I say default, I mean like it means that they are naturally gonna do that. So like in this potential, it says that the Nomus aren't particularly aware of their suffering by the doctor's hands, and they love him just because he's their creator. The other thing that I'm looking at is that the doctor's view of reality is so warped. He has a really weird look at how he looks at these things. For all we know, the doctor could have programmed those Nomus so that whenever they think nicely of him, they get a dopamine rush. That's not the same thing that's being, like, that is not what this guy is saying here when he's talking about these two lines. Those two lines imply that those Nomu are acting of their own free volition. Given his perception, I think it's much more likely that, yes, there might be something interesting in that they're using their quirk on their own accord without being commanded, but I still think that's because their brain's been tampered with. I don't think there's any legitimate goodness coming out of that. The reason that's important is because if there's legitimate goodness coming out of the Nomus towards the doctor, it makes things like Kurogiri a little bit tougher. But if you think about it from the perspective of their brains been messed up, this guy is so far gone that he can't even perceive his own effects like the tampering of the brain on it. Like it's just a situation where you have a character who thinks that they love him when it's not really love. It's like synthetic. It's fabricated. That was a fabricated response. I do think it's cool that in his fabricated response they are able to use the quirk without being told to. But him going further and saying like, oh man, they must really love me. They did it to protect me. You know, that's where I draw the line. Again, it's gonna be really interesting to see, because if the author wants to give the Doctor his comeuppance, the best way to do it would be have the Nomus go and attack the Doctor. Right now, he's established a position where he thinks the Nomu are going to die for him without being told to, where that may not be the case. Maybe one day the Kurogiri Nomu goes crazy and is able to destroy the Doctor in revenge when the Doctor is in this false sense of security. That's really the big thing that's being created here. It's whether or not the Doctor has the false sense of security with the Nomu. I know it's very subtle, the difference between the two potentials, but it could be important in a critical moment. That said, I guess ultimately the big thing is I do want it confirmed whether or not Mocha did this out of legitimate kindness or because it's programmed to help the Doctor. You know, like I don't know how much the character is deluding himself, because from the first couple of pages in the chapter, I know that the character is pretty deluded. I know that the character has like some weird attachment here. So yeah, that's my old question. Anyway, the bottom of the page is that we're seeing the Femnomu get ready, which is pretty cool. We've seen this design, I think. Wait, I got the chapter pulled up right here. We saw the design back in chapter 221, so it's cool to see the design coming back. I'm really excited. She looks really good in this chapter. Anyway, we go into page 12 and page 13. Which is a double spread, one of the good Bunny Girl shots. I think that was a great shot with all of them coming out to rip her apart. I think it's really neat. The canisters that were being destroyed, here's what's interesting, is that those are the canisters that we saw in chapter 221. And I can tell you, just looking at this here, like I'll zoom in on chapter 221. So the first one here is Hood. I'm pretty sure it's Hood, although I think the previous chapter has a mistake because it drew something inside of Hood's canister, which isn't correct here. I do think the previous chapter had the mistake because it looks like Hood in the silhouette, because in the silhouette you can also see Femnomu. Anyway, back to this chapter. We see 3 of the Nomu that we saw in chapter 221 come out of those canisters, which is pretty interesting. So given just how the author is going about this, he has these designs ready, so he's probably comfortable drawing these designs, given that he plotted them out back in 221. What's interesting is that when you look at 221's chapter, the thing that was next to that original Nomu is different now. These are not the same Nomu. They don't even have the same legs. So it's interesting that the Nomus have been moved around. When you look at the last 2 Nomus coming out of 261's 12 and 13 here, they're more exotic designs. So what I think happened is that the one in 221 is too basic. Because when you look at Femnomu, Fat Nomu, and Metalhead Nomu, they're all distinct. They're like super distinct characters here. Whereas that final one, like, it looks pretty generic, especially when you compare it to the one that's on the other side of chapter 221. So I'm thinking that the author developed the designs more. So I'm thinking, you know, in developing the designs, he found ones that he was more comfortable with, and ones that would be more cool to look at. That said, you know, the reason that these are, like, it's important to look back at 221 is because we're seeing which Nomus are active and which ones aren't. And we'll talk more about the ones from 221 that we can't see here, because there's one of them in 221 that is very designed, and if it's super designed, that probably means the author's going to use it somewhere. So the only question is the author going to use it in this in this portion, or is he going to use it against the heroes that are about to raid the Paranormal Liberation Front? That's like why this is kind of important. Moving on to page 14, things of value, page 14. Bunny Girl gets tossed into the sky. That was pretty cool. I would like to draw your attention to Femnomu. I do like that the author maintained the design of her having stitches across her leg. Like, that's pretty cool. I really very much do appreciate that. The other thing of value on page 14 is that when you look at the bottom panels, you see that Fat Nomu is coming in and regenerating his arms into mouths. So that's pretty interesting because you didn't get that would be its power in chapter 221. When you go back and you look at page 14 and, sorry, is it 14? Yeah, 12 and 13, you see that he was creating some weird stuff, like it's creating mouths all over its body. It's pretty interesting. I do want, it looks, Like, this is one of the ones that looks super unstable, but it's hard to tell because, well, Bunny Girl just ripped his arm apart with that kick that she did. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I want to see to what... I wonder if he's one of the first ones showing us how unstable it is. But given that it's regenerating so easily, well, we're going to have to see. One thing I will say, though, is that Bunny Girl did a lot of damage, just not from what we saw. Because when you see this fat one on the other panel, it's like it's fully lost its arm, as opposed to just losing the top part of the arm from when Bunny Girl kicked it. Anyway, cool stuff to see the Nomu designs. We move over into page 15. The things of value here are that we get the full, well, designs of the Nomus that are immediately facing down Bunny Girl. One thing I do want to say here is that there was a progression of them learning to talk throughout the 2 panels and then the 3rd panel. And then it ends off with page 15, final panel of Fem Nomu talking very coherently. Anyway, we move into page 16 and Crust gets in here. Things of value for this page. Fat Nomu came rushing out of nowhere at Crust, so that it moved pretty fast to be able to do that, I think. And Crust has identified that it is most likely a high end, given that he's recognized that it is a talking Nomu. The Nomu shows that it knows what Crust is. I'm not surprised. Like, the Nomus have shown that they have like some degree of memory capacity, so them getting loaded with memories makes sense to me. Anyway, we're going to the final page here, page 17, with Bunny Girl saying that things are getting heated up. Things of value here: the chair. The chair. I know this is dumb to point it out with the chair. I now understand the value of the chair. Because in my head, I always thought it was a rolly chair. But no. When you look at that panel, clearly the chair is on rails. So, I understand now. I understand why the doctor would get on a chair. Like, if it's on an on-rails chair and not just him pushing himself off, like, alright, that makes a lot more sense. I hope that there wasn't a detail that I missed in previous chapters that would have told me that. But whatever. You know what? Cool to know that he has an on-rails chair. You know, good for him. Good for him. Anyway, any other things of value on that page? The doctor is still holding on to those canisters. Again, I really want to know what 2 quirks are in there, because that's pretty intense. And then finally we have the page of Bunny Girl looking down at the Nomus. I think the thing of value there is that the Majin Buu looking Nomu looks pretty cool. The Elephant Nomu also looks pretty cool. But only other thing is that the Fem Nomu is doing gripping motions with her arm. So that's telling me maybe she's like trying to get used to her body. Like, these Nomus are not going to last long, man. Because I like that right there is the signal to me that she's having a little bit of trouble with that body. Like, she might be hurting a bit. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention, though. When you look at Fat Nomu from chapter 221 and you look at it in this chapter, when it came approaching Crust, it looked like it had propulsion behind it. And in 221, that thing was still missing legs. So I wonder if the guy put in rocket legs. We know that Metalhead Nomu has prosthetic legs, so I do wonder if it's getting supported to that degree. Anyway, now that we're talking about Nomus, we have to legitimately talk about how many Nomus are they actually going to face. Well, in terms of how many Nomu designs we've seen that are high-ends, there's quite a bit. From chapter 221, there's like at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we look at the left side, there's like 6 Nomu designs unaccounted for. One of those Nomus is lacking a head, so I assume that the doctor didn't get to install a head on that one yet. But the Nomu next to it with all the mouths, that's a very distinctive design. That's going to be used. Like, there's no way that design isn't going to be used. As for the other 4 canisters, those are non-distinct designs, so we don't really know what's going to happen there. You can definitely see where the author put effort in and where he didn't, like which ones are throwaways and which ones aren't. Everyone else looks pretty standard. So I don't think those designs are going to come into play. The problem is chapter 260. We saw that whole room with of 260 with the various Nomu designs. Like, what are we going to do here? There's quite a lot of them in there. There's one that has tentacles. There's a short looking one. There's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 unique designs in chapter 260. So we're going to have to see how the author wants to spin this. There is like, what, roughly 7, 8, 9 maybe? Like, yeah, 9 unique designs that we have yet to see come out. Point is, like, there's a lot of potential of this getting worse for the group that's dealing with the doctor right now, and more potential for the doctor to get away from things. Now, just looking forward into the future, quick theory time. You know, where are we going from here? Like, you know, how will the situation end? Because right now we got a passageway out of the hospital that doesn't go to where the heroes are. That's an escape route. You know, how does this arc work out in the future? Well, what I'm thinking right now is that the conditions here, we need to get into a situation, I think, for Hero Academia to continue on with the villains being a problem. We need to have a good amount of people getting away. So in the case that Shigaraki is captured before he is ready, then we need a good amount of the people over at the Paranormal Liberation Front to get out of there. We need a good amount of them to survive so that they can go rescue Shigaraki. If Shigaraki gets away here, that will be perfectly fine because that makes sense. If in the case that Shigaraki gets away here, we do need the heroes to take away a good portion of the Paranormal Liberation Front. They don't need to take out the executives, but they do need to severely reduce the numbers. Like, the Paranormal Liberation Front has way too many people. It needs to be cut down a bit because it's too hard to manage the story otherwise, I believe. Like, Shigaraki cannot have just a giant army. One thing I will say is that if Shigaraki is captured and taken to jail, that is good enough reason to do the breakout. Like, Shigaraki could also just push for a breakout at a later date. Either way, it's just an issue of setting up reasons. Either way, it's just an issue of setting up motives. Regardless, with the situation, looking at the situation right now, I don't think Bunny Girl is gonna die. Crust maybe, but I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be in a situation where the doctor barely gets away, just from looking how things are being set up here. The worst case scenario is that someone unexpected shows up, because that'd suck. Like, if a Gigantomachia is there, holy crap. But we'll have to see. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. Let me know what you're thinking about this week, this chapter. Let me know what you think about Nomus. How many Nomus do you think are going to get involved here? I would love to know that. And yeah, till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.